Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. We're just gonna have like, we'll leave in a second, but let's just talk for 2 seconds. Is that okay? And if anyone has any questions, we'll answer those too. Yeah.
It's a long afternoon. So
I know it's been.
you won't offend us.
Thank you. What is it like? And now I'm going into a different mode. But what's it like hearing that live? Does it come back to you the days of? Was it like a journal writing that piece?
It's been 4 years now. So there's a lot come in between. But yeah, sure. There are things I didn't remember because I hadn't heard you play it 4 years ago. And there's no recording, so it's like a new piece. So mostly it's hearing, because the first time he interleaved my music with Schumann's, so that was an entirely different experience. And this time we got the Schumann, which is a very far out piece. But I don't know if you felt that, but Schumann, he made classical music, but he's really tough. This particular piece, at least, is really hard going. So in a sense, my piece is almost a relief. We thought it was going to be the other way around. But,
right. For me, it is too, because I feel like with Schumann. Well, what were you going to say?
No, that's it.
Well, I was going to like, whenever I play classical repertoire, there's always this like hump. I call it the hump of disbelief, which is I can't believe I'm playing this piece. And for when we were first talking about Fantail and the sort of like zeitgeist of Carnival, sort of this existential haze of Carnival being sort of in your mind when you're writing it, I started to freak out because I thought, I think this means I'm learning Carnival. And it started to cut, and it was like, oh my gosh, because I went to school hearing that piece all the time. And so there was also this, and this happens whenever I play sort of classical music where there's this sort of baggage of like, is it okay for me to do that, blah, blah, blah. And whenever I play contemporary music, and this is sort of why I drifted to it at a young age, I always feel more like I can be an ambassador of it because it's new. And what's funny is like when I play your piece, and for instance, it might just sound like so unfamiliar to other ears, but after living with it sort of off and on for 4 years, I totally know when I play a wrong note. It makes me crazy, like it's just like the Schumann, and so I get super close to these pieces, and they sort of buck. And if a piece is 21, 22 movements long, just like there might be ebbs and flows of your concentration or kind of ways of living through the music, me too. There's points in the Schumann where it's like, whoa, Adam, you're tired. Like, this is happening. and in yours too, where I'm like, and then I start feeling the ruin. So this is a real journey through both of those pieces. But yeah, I wondered. And when you were composing that piece, I get a sense of like, that it's almost like a journal in a way. But was it?
Well, yeah, 21 pieces. You do one, okay. You do the next one. A few days go by, time to do the next one. So, and then you start looking back, have I done this before? I don't want to repeat myself too much. What might go in good juxtaposition to what just happened, and so on, and you kind of keep going. So as you go along, you create a kind of context for what you're going to do next.
Right.
And that's...
Which is why maybe he had a mixed reaction when I said, well, I'm going to totally just intersperse it with Schumann, and you were very patient. He was like, well, okay. But yeah, now that I actually started playing both pieces, because this was the first time I've ever played Carnival that way too. So in a way, I always was able to give myself a relief from both idioms in a way, of being like, okay, that's enough Schumann. And so this was a real kind of Everest in a way of doing that. But I also really wanted them to just collide. And that's why I didn't like allow you to clap at the end of that triumphant ending of Carnival. I really just wanted it to be a head-on collision into that really insanely amazing first chord of Fantail, because I just wanted that sort of sense of whiplash between the two of them. But you grew up really in love with classical music, though. It was around you, right?
Yeah.
And so do you still listen to it, or?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
The composers that you sort of find yourself around, did they have the same relationship with that idiom?
Not really. The closest, Feldman in a way was the closest. Earl Brown had a very close relationship to jazz.
Oh.
And Morty was back and forth.
But not Cage.
No, Cage, if Cage never heard another note of classical music, I don't think it would make any difference to him.
So yeah.
It's very, very striking.
Yeah.
It wasn't true earlier. He liked Bach a lot. And then he took like Mozart like to use Mozart in that one piece. But basically he was not interested.
And one more question before we sort of open it up to any thoughts in the room. Would you play these at the piano, or would you like start at the piano, or would you start on the paper and then go to the piano?
I don't go near the piano. I mean, I write and then I go to the piano.
Okay.
Partly, I mean, I also improvise. Now that's the piano. That's it. But no, it's a distraction to me. I'm not trying to find stuff and then write it down. I write it. I mean, that's the whole point of composing for me. Is that you write it and then you see what happened.
Interesting.
It's a completely different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone once said a really interesting thing, and I didn't want to lead our listeners into different things, but after we did the premiere, someone once said that the Carnival was like right brain and then Fantail was like left brain, which never left me. This idea of like, there's something that's really, and my entry point into Carnival, because I found it to be a really gnashing, like extroverted piece. I like the Eusebius Schumann, which, you know, he had split personality basically. Or he entertained the idea of having split personalities, and it was Eusebius, sort of the poet, introvert, and Florestan, the extrovert. And Carnival itself felt super Florestan to me, and it never resonated with me. And then I started thinking of that piece as being about masks. And so even when it's happy, it's not really happy. You know, it's dissonant and gnashing and in a way ugly. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, well, when it's pretty, it's actually maybe not even pretty. And so I started thinking, it's actually a really sophisticated piece to actually be about a facade. Mm-hmm. But I always thought that was a really interesting thing. It never left me, the idea of then Fantail being really the dark side of the moon of that. But I'm sure you'll say, get out of here. But was it, am I way too in the pocket? I mean, it was just something that was in the back of your mind, right?
Yeah.
This piece, okay. I'm going to like pair it with like a Bach partita next time and forget Carnival all too. But no, thank you. Is there any thoughts in the room? We'll be around, but any questions or thoughts for either of us? Yes.
This is the only time I'm hearing it, but I appreciated going straight from Schumann into Fantail and not pausing, not losing the momentum, not taking a mental break.
Oh, good.
Process,
yeah, I kind of just didn't want people to like go use the restroom and chill. I just didn't want a total decompression. I wanted actually to keep it really tight and then to feel that happen. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes.
So you have this gadget you were putting in the piano during the show?
Yeah, so
there's
it's been written about Christian Wolff's sort of process that you sort of invite performers into the idea of joining you in the compositional process. That said, this piece is really on the keys, as they say. And a lot of the extra musical stuff that you're seeing there was sort of things that I asked permission to, but sort of like was just like, what if we did this? What if we do that? So those two things that you saw, the things that made the humming sound, those are called ebos, and those were designed for guitars, and it's basically making a magnetic vibration of the string that it can go on forever. And I liked the idea of introducing that into the Schumann, because where it happens in the Schumann, that movement's called sphinxes, and all he has are these giant notes on the page, and there's no real indication of what you're supposed to do with them, and different pianists do different things. And I thought and it's the only place in Fantail where Christian literally quotes note for note in a different way, different ranges and stuff, but it's the only direct link between the two pieces. It's the only real wink and link. And so I thought it'd be an interesting way to sort of let the listener be like, I've heard this and I've seen this thing already, and it was in the other piece. And then the thing in my mouth looks really cool. It's actually just a page turner. I know. I do that. I whip that thing out like whenever I can, because it makes everyone go, what am I hearing? But the truth is, you're not hearing anything. The reason and so it really gets everyone's attention. No, but that is just because for those movements, I liked the idea of using the middle pedal, which sustains certain notes but not others. And I turn pages with my foot using a Bluetooth. And so that thing in my mouth lets me keep both feet occupied while not tapping my iPad. I just don't like tapping my iPad in the middle of a performance. But poor Christian, I was like, they're gonna ask Christian, why did you have Adam putting stuff in his mouth? And he's like, I'm not. It's all him. But yeah, that's what those things are. I do want to say though that like the whistling, the humming, that stuff, that's Christian. That piece that I'll show you outside is that's one of the examples of the piece that's a graphic notation. And the one with all the trills, if you remember, that one is sort of a game where it's notated in such a way that you're doing trills in different spots, and he's actually directing which fingers are doing what, but the notes are actually free. And so while this piece has graphic notation and sort of improvised or indeterminate factors, I sort of like the idea of even the stuff that's strictly notated being able to sort of play with it. There's only a few places where the tempo is indicated, and is that intentional?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, any classical piece is played in many different ways. I mean, you can get a recording of the Fifth Symphony, it takes 25 minutes. Get another one, it takes 30 minutes.
Yeah, it'll be dun 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 dun, and then it'll be dun 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 dun.
So that's what happens when you perform music. It just comes out differently. And I sort of take that as a kind of, that becomes part of the way I approach composition with that in mind already.
Yeah.
That there's going to be a kind of conversation between what I write and what some performer plays.
Yeah.
And that's going to change. So it is a collaborative operation to make the music in real time live. Because what I do is just scribble on a piece of paper.
More than that.
And what he does, he asks you guys to make the sounds. So they're based on what I've scribbled, but...
And do you, like, if you hear someone or me do something that's totally left field, do you occasionally get bothered?
It could be, no. First of all, I check. I say, how come you did that? Where in the score justifies your doing that?
Right.
And if they can show me, then it's okay. But if they can't, sometimes, and usually actually if it's really way out, or if I really don't like it, then it's usually that they've misunderstood some kind of notation. They just got it wrong. Made a mistake, yeah. But there is quite a lot of leeway there.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, whenever I play Bach with other performers, which I do from time to time, I've done like 24 pianists, well-tempered clavers, I tell the audience that every phrase, every pedaling, every dynamic that they hear, every articulation is really the invention of the pianist.
Yes.
And Bach just wrote the blueprint of just notes and rhythms and rests.
Bach is very striking that way. I mean, it just gives you notes. Doesn't tell you anything. Doesn't tell you
Nothing else.
tempo, phrasing, none of that.
Yeah.
You have to work that out.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, there are certain parameters within which you can imagine that working for Bach.
Right.
I mean, to limits. But still, there's definitely an open area there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and keep talking to us out there if you wish. Thank you so much, Christian. Oh my gosh!
These are,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'll give you your book back. Thank you.
We have refreshments, anyone is interested, right up back here?
Bunny and Frank. Oh my gosh. The whole time I'm thinking Bunny and Frank are right behind me. How's it going? You too. I have something for you to bring back home for Nico for his birthday party because I can never see him. And no, I'm going to be in Europe. No, I'm going to Germany. I'll be in Europe. But I always try to get a hold of the book.